All right, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are here once again, JV Wins Dogon SS, for another edition of the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Thank you to all of the new subscribers and new members of the community who've been subscribing to the channel, hitting that like button, leaving those comments. We certainly appreciate you as we continue to crank out this logical content and keep things rocking and rolling. And as we always like to say, if this is your first time catching wind of what we like to do here on this channel, this is how it rolls. This is how it goes, yo. Every week, every day, with each and every video upload. So if you appreciate the commentary, and even if you don't, go ahead and subscribe to the channel anyway, and let us know how much you think we suck. Please let us know how much you think we suck when you're in the process of subscribing to the channel. So with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and get things kicked off. We got a lot of interesting topics to kick around the tires tonight. First thing we are going to talk about is Lil Durk. Whoa. Literally 2 days, 3 days after we discussed Lil Durk receiving not one but two keys to the city in the Chicago area, Lil Durk was apprehended in none other than South Florida, our neck of the woods, on murder for hire charges. Yeah, some pretty serious charges. So we are going to go ahead and get right into this. Obviously, this is not a good look for Durk, but it is somewhat in line with some of the stuff that we've been talking about on the channel as of late. So this article says Lil Durk charged with murder for hire after Florida arrest. Lil Durk found himself in serious legal trouble on Friday morning. The rapper was arrested by U.S. Marshals in Florida. Broward County Correctional Facility is holding Durk, according to XXL and DJ Academics. The Windy City rapper has experienced legal trouble in the past. The circumstances have never been this serious, however. Lil Durk has reportedly been charged with murder for hire. Broward County has released the charge info along with the rapper's mugshot. Obviously, we are recording this on Tuesday, so this happened about 4 days ago. So a lot of this you guys have probably already have seen. Lil Durk's arrest came hours after a California indictment referenced him. The indictment named 5 men with ties to the group OTF. Lil Durk founded said group back in 2010. The indictment alleges that the men were hired to kill rapper Quando Rondo. These men were alleged to have used OTF-affiliated credit cards to book flights and rental cars to California. A death did occur on August 19, 2022, but it was not the alleged artist. Instead, Quando Rondo's cousin, Lil Pab, was shot and unalived. Rondo later tributed Pab on social media and stated that the death hurt his heart. So there is Durk's mugshot. This continues to say murder for hire involving a death and conspiracy to conduct murder for hire are the charges that have been handed to the 5 men. The indictment also alleged that a member of Lil Durk's OTF crew offered the men lucrative music opportunities if the alleged hit against Rondo was successful. The news of Lil Durk's arrest came as a shock to the hip-hop world. His arrest even coincided with a DJ Academics live stream. The hip-hop personality became visibly upset on camera when he learned what happened. He lamented Durk's connection to such a tragic incident. The timing of Durk's arrest could not have been worse. The rapper was arrested on charges related to a non-lethal shooting in February 2019. He was released on bail alongside King Von, who was also taken into custody due to the shooting. October marked the month in which the charges were finally dropped. It was the murder of Vaughn, in fact, that feds believe led to the alleged hit attempt on Quando Rondo. Durk voiced his desire to stay out of prison in a since-deleted tweet from 2022. Quote, the goal is not going to jail, so y'all will never see me do tough stuff out here to look street. He has tragically fallen short of said goal. So that pretty much gives you the gist of what we got going on thus far with our friend Lil Durk. I am not exactly sure as of the time of recording whether he has been extradited back to California or not. I know that was set to take place because these charges, of course, stem from California. But this is what we got going on. So, not well, about a week and a half, 2 weeks after being honored with not one but two keys to the city, Lil Durk is apprehended on murder for hire charges. What are your thoughts on this evolving situation?
The first initial report of this, I wasn't really shocked so much that he was involved in something like this, but I was definitely shocked in a sense that we just covered him and he was getting keys to the city for being a pillar in the community. And our whole discussion point, and I could speak for mine at least, was that yeah, even though he may be doing things within the community, his music still does all of that op stuff. And he was actually living it out apparently. So I was, on social media, I caught a glimpse of, some videos that was playing some of his lyrics. And, at the time of the recording last week, I was saying that I wasn't still too familiar with his stuff, as of late. And he was still talking that crazy stuff, man. And he was doing a lot of self snitching. And those clips that I was listening to, he was pretty much not so much referencing this unaliving, but he was still talking in that same vein of unaliving other people. And so he was still talking that stuff, which again made that whole key to the city thing quite questionable to me. I did myself a favor and I went looking to see what those two mayors had to say. The woman mayor, the female mayor, she already retracted her key.
Yeah.
And then the dude, he's still on some stuff where, let due process do its duty and, innocent until proven guilty. To me, that whole thing, I think he knew what was going on. This is how I felt about it. Because when these Fed cases come down and these indictments and all of this stuff start happening, uh, I think these guys catch wind of this stuff. And he was leaving. He was leaving. They said he booked 3 flights, and he was about to get on board to a flight to London, I believe, or Italy or something like that.
Italy. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Italy.
Italy.
Yeah.
And so, he was trying to get out, which leads me to believe I felt like he felt like this was coming down the line. And to me, this felt like, so that key to the city stuff to me felt like publicity. It felt like he was trying to put a good name out there for himself for, cameras and stuff like that. And the whole thing of him being a Muslim was all an act as well. So all of his internet talk of wanting to change his life, y'all ain't gonna catch me out here doing no goofy stuff and all of that, it seemed to be all a facade, part of his whole chess game that he was playing with the world, where he wanted everybody to believe that he was this reformed person and turn over a new leaf. But he was still out here allegedly calling shots like a mob boss. So am I disappointed? I mean, of course, you don't want to see anybody get in these type of situation. But at the same time, I'm not surprised at all. There was this whole campaign of sliding for Vaughn, his homeboy, and the internet, the people that follow him, the civilians, the teenagers that play Fortnite after they're done watching a live stream from academics. They were the ones out there pretty much saying, hey, man, you got to slide for Vaughn. You got to slide for Vaughn. And him trying to keep up with his street persona, I feel like that's what led him in. I feel like he got peer pressured into this. Would he have done this if there was such a large campaign on the internet to get him to do such a thing? Maybe, maybe not. But I really felt like he had to uphold his gangster in that situation. and it got him in this wild predicament where not only is he facing life, but he's facing a possible death penalty. So this should serve as a cautionary tale for anybody out there that's talking all of that street stuff and all that op talk, that it's really not worth it. And eventually, one of these days, they're going to catch up with you. So, but what are your thoughts on Lil Durk getting roped off in South Florida for alleged murdered for hire? What do you?
Very unfortunate, of course, but I think this is also a lesson for the greater community in how to place certain individuals within their proper context. I think this is not only a lesson for, well, if it is a lesson for Dirk, I'm not exactly sure, but it's also a lesson for the rest of us on how to place some of these people within their proper context. Yeah, the first thing that I thought of when I sent you the story when I first saw it was we literally talked about him 3 days prior receiving 2 keys to the city. And my trepidation with that fact was due to the symbolism that a key to the city stands for, and how, in my opinion, that is in direct contrast with the content of his music. And my suggestion is that we need to start maintaining a higher standard for an individual's community service and their civil stewardship with the content of their artistic export. I believe there needs to be some consistency between those two things before you just start handing people keys to the city, because those things mean something. And based upon what we see and what we know thus far, this clearly undermines any and everything he was doing in his community. Like, I don't care how much good he was doing via receiving 2 keys to the city, this undermines all of that. So my thing is, if we are going to start giving people keys to the city, there needs to be a more consistent adherence to the type of export that they put out before they are bestowed such an honor. Even if they are doing philanthropic things, there needs to be some consistency, because my overall opinion is that despite how much good he may be doing in his community or in his neighborhood or in these 2 places in which he was given keys to the city, the content of his music is far more wide reaching, and it touches way more people than the people that his philanthropic efforts are touching via whatever he's doing on the streets, with his boots on the ground. Statistically speaking, I don't know how many people live in those communities where he was doing that work that prompted him to get those honors. But I'm going to guess it's in the thousands. It's in the tens of thousands, dozens of thousands, probably, I'm assuming. It's not like it was in Chicago. Those were like outlying areas around the city of Chicago in Illinois. But the amount of people that are touched by that pales in comparison to the amount of people who may be at one point or another affected by the content of his music. And the content of his music has not, for the most part, changed. It's still been consistently on that drill stuff and about what you'll do if you're checked and what you're still actively doing in the streets and who you're running up on. So I get it, man. Everybody wants to poo-poo an individual such as myself who has that opinion, because the idea is let them do them. They're reflecting what is actually happening in their communities, and so be it. But he's being honored for those lyrics. You know what I'm saying? Like, these individuals are being given keys to the city, and they are actively, simultaneously putting forth the type of content suggesting that they are still doing certain things, and those things are touching the ears of a lot of people who don't live in those neighborhoods to directly feel the benefit from whatever it is that he may be doing philanthropically. So me personally, I don't know how you reconcile that. I can't reconcile it. I'm pretty sure there are others who can, but personally, I can't. I think that there needs to be some more consistency, and the reason why there needs to be more consistency is for this very reason. Because now this guy is bammed up and is facing serious charges. And in retrospect, one may ask, why was he giving keys to the city in the first place if this was something that potentially could have happened? Right. And my answer to that question would be The reason why he was given keys to the city, despite the fact that such a thing could happen, is because there actually is no standard when it comes to giving that stuff out. We just give that stuff out because we feel like it, because they may be from those neighborhoods, they may be from those areas. As you pointed out last week, some of these elected officials just might be trying to curry favor. And so here they go giving that stuff out because they want to gain favorability amongst the voting population, right? Amongst their constituency. So there's all kinds of outlying reasons as to why that kind of stuff happens, but it needs to stop because, in my opinion, this is embarrassing. And I'm not trying to, he's got enough trouble on his hands. So I'm not necessarily trying to poo poo him. I'm poo pooing the idea that people like him get put on a particular pedestal of celebrity hero worship, in this instance, within the context of rap and hip hop, for doing certain things that literally contradict the content of their primary export, which in this case is his music. And that to me has to stop, in my opinion. It has to. Will it? Who knows? I'm not sure. We know the hip hop journalism community won't demand that it stops because they say everything that a rapper does is good, despite what their music may be. There isn't a critical voice in the hip hop journalism community, from what I can tell. They'll keep saying that he puts out classic albums all day, every day. Meanwhile, this kind of stuff is happening, literally making your assessment of his music and his content and who he is as a person, at least on the surface, useless and non-consequential and utterly embarrassing, in my opinion. So those are my thoughts on this situation. We need to have some more consistency. I just think we need to raise the standard. Just because these people show up and give Thanksgiving to their community members doesn't mean that they ought to be honored when, I would say, 5.5 to 6 days out of the week, they are otherwise selling poison right back to those same neighborhoods. I think that there needs to be a higher standard on that. We'll see what the fallout comes from this. Again, this is not my soliloquy going anti-Durk. This is more so my synopsis of the overall environment around how we perceive people like him. There just needs to be more uniformity with how we choose to acknowledge some of these people within positive contexts, I would say.
I mean, I agree, but I would also say that, the people at the top are going to keep doing that. They're going to keep promoting these people. And that was last week. That was my whole point, was that I was more disappointed in these mayors that's supposed to be these upward mobile Black people that were sitting here doing this. And they're elders to us. Yet and still we sitting here and we know this. But they're out there in the higher ranks in politics and have actual control over people's lives in their community. And they still chose to do that. So that was my criticism towards Durk. And as I also mentioned last week, is that, Durk is traumatized. He's a traumatized kid. And so his dad was in that life. He was in that life. He saw a lot of his people around his age get unalived and all these types of things. So he was in the game as a person that was more of a sociopath than actually a highly functionable person. Hence the reason why he would do such a silly thing when he has so many resources at his disposal. So my knock wasn't so much on Durk for receiving the keys. It was more or less these two mayors that actually gave it to him. On top of that, as I mentioned, like, I really feel as though he had a leg up on this and he kind of knew something was coming down the pipeline, which is why I really feel like to me, I felt like that was a whole play. Like, if I was the feds, I'll start investigating those two mayors for bribery. And when the whole key to the city for Diddy thing went down, all right, Diddy was in bed with that man, literally and figuratively. So that was a situation where Diddy did that for the pub. And I feel like this was the same thing going on with Durk with those two mayors. Now that woman, she retracted hers ASAP. But that other guy who's still sitting here placating, talking about some let the justice system do its thing. To me, that was like, hey, bro, that's not the right answer. So I was expecting them both to, rebuke this man. But here, yet and still, it's still some rigmarole with that. So I would just say that this should be in the hands of the people, that everybody in the community, everybody sitting around watching this stuff. And we should be the ones holding these celebrities accountable, and these politicians for that matter. And no, that should not have went down. But honestly, I don't put nothing past those dudes up there. Like I said, they don't have standards. They will not have standards because historically they never did. So I don't really anticipate them to have a higher standard for what they promote to our people. So for him to get the keys to the city like that, and literally a couple days later get roped off in a situation like this, the irony is outrageous.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, man. Again, this should serve as a cautionary tale for all of those young dudes out there that thought this stuff was cool, and all of those people that they grew up idolizing. All of these rappers talking about they was taking these pills, they were gonna shoot this person, they were gonna do that to that person. All of those people were studio rappers. You know, all of those people right now are, have allegations or weird stuff circling around their name, but it has nothing to do with street stuff. And so those people were out there literally studio gangsters. They'll sit around and talk about all that stuff, but never did a damn thing. Because if they did, they'd also be getting indicted. And so historically, when we were talking about topics, about, what hip hop turned into, I would also mention that, yeah, man, these guys are actually out here doing it. They're actually doing the drugs. They're actually in gangs, and they're actually unaliving people. And so Durk served as another example of people that was in that cohort that actually was about that life. When I was a young and impressionable person, I wanted to be, in the rap game. But I also knew I grew up pretty decent. And in order for me to talk about, because I was talking about, dumb stuff, not about unaliving people, but I would definitely do gun bars, and I would definitely do stuff about, selling stuff. And I was like, man, this don't feel authentic. So there was a part of me that felt like, hey, man, you got to be out there doing some of this stuff, so you can actually talk that talk and not be like these studio guys. Now, I wasn't tempted enough to actually do it. But so I had a decision to make. Either you can talk about that stuff and go actually do it, or not do it and not talk about it at all. And I say, you know what? I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm not going to do it. But then there was other people that grew up around that stuff, seeing that stuff or whatever, had access to that stuff, and they made that choice to go do it so they can go talk that real stuff and be a real N-word. So when they go on Vlad or they go on anything else and they talk about they sold bricks and they did this and they did that, they stabbed a person there, and it's real rap, because I'm not none of these fake people out here. Well, that was the trap, and everybody, all of these young people in this generation have fell into it. So that's why self-snitching is at an all-time high. And like I mentioned, when I was on social media and I was seeing some of these clips of some of Durk's verses, I mean, he's literally talking that stuff. And there was a clip out there floating around with him being interviewed by DJ Academics. And he was like, man, I don't hear no more. Academics asked him about all that, hey, that slide for Vaughn stuff, whatever, all of this stuff on the internet, people talking about that. And he said, I don't know. I don't hear about that stuff no more. It's kind of strange. Basically, mocking the situation, talking about something. Yeah, I don't hear about it no more. And this was after the shooting. So, being real cryptic with his words, so much so that Academics said, man, I'm trying to, decode what you're saying. You're speaking in parables. But yeah, he was speaking in parables, basically letting everybody know on the internet that I ain't playing about this, and I slid for Vaughn. So this guy here, he's looking at it. It's a wild situation, man. It's only so much so you want to give these guys credit for being victimized by this large system that they just grew up in. But at the same time, as I mentioned last week, he had access to a lot of resources. He was rubbing the elbows with the right kinds of people in certain situations. Enough so, like 50 Cent Wallow from $1 Million Worth of Game was basically cautioning this guy that you don't have to go down that route. You already made it. But nevertheless, he still did it. So, yeah, man, I don't know what to say about this. I don't, normally I say good luck. But there's victims on the other side of this, and we only know one of them. So who knows what else this guy was out here doing? So yeah, man, wild stuff, bro.
Yeah, well, what you always have to do, the point with any story like this, whether it, this can be wide, this is all encompassing, whether we're talking about, you know, um, the sexual marketplace, dating, relationships, family. In this case, we're talking about this music stuff. It can be
Mhm.
gambling. Like you never really assess the agent because the agent is always going to take advantage of the market. What you do is you assess the purveyors of the marketplace. Who is it that allows the market to exist in the first place? And so, from that standpoint, I agree with you that it's about how the community interprets these kinds of situations and these kinds of people, where we place them and how we perceive them.
Mhm.
And that's why I bring it back to my original point that the community at large, the music listening community, and the community of humanity needs to do a better job of maintaining a higher standard
Mhm.
for where we place these individuals in terms of grandstanding and how grandiose we put them, what kind of pedestal we put them on. And right now the community is falling short of that.
Mhm.
They're already on social media, speaking of social media, talking about free Dirk and damn Dirk, and
Already, yeah.
they're doing all of these campaigns talking about how this guy needs to be freed and all of this kind of stuff. And my whole thing is, okay, fine, due process, but that don't mean we do campaigns on social media talking about free Dirk when these are charges that are as serious as they are. At the very least, people just need to remain silent on that, but not necessarily shout to the mountaintop that freedom is something that we need to see here. And whether, regardless of how this ultimately ends up playing out,
Mhm.
he's presently receiving a boost in certain respects from this situation because his streaming numbers are upticking and people are listening to more of his music right now because of this particular situation. So he's ancillarily already receiving a benefit from the ordeal that he presently finds himself in. And that is all well and good. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's emblematic of a generally low standard that we as people tend to maintain when it comes to how we feel about and where we place these people in society. And I think that there just needs to be an increase in terms of how we do that, how we incorporate how we see people. um, it's all good that he may have been doing great things in his neighborhoods and in his communities. However, like I said before, the content of his music is far more wide reaching than whatever he was doing in his neighborhoods. It has a greater impact statistically. And I think people need to keep that stuff in mind and at least keep that in mind when we're talking about, you know, stuff like the Free Dirt campaign. This is a far cry from what happened to Meek, where he was just violating probation. Like this is an entirely different level, and I think that the environment around how we perceive that is a direct microscope on the overall community, which, in my opinion, creates the marketplace for people like him to be grouped into those categories of being honored and dignified. And I think if we remove that marketplace and just look at everything as face value and truly do judge it based on you know, let's just wait until things play out the way that they are meant to. I think that we'll be better off for that because right now things are a little bit out of whack. I think if the market was a little more tame, he wouldn't have received keys to the city in the first place. So I'm with you on that. I'm with you on the officials, and but I'm just people in general, the elected officials, those mayors, and everybody else who feels the need to constantly leap to defense mode and these rationalizations to try and reconcile reasons as to why it's okay to dignify certain people juxtaposed to the kind of content that you put out. I don't think it's wrong to suggest that there needs to be a higher standard and a little more consistency with that.
Yeah, 1,000, man. Last thing I'll say is, alluding to what I said a little bit earlier, that Dirk fell into the trap, and it's ironic, that they want to call certain forms of rap trap rap, because the trap's supposed to represent the trap in the neighborhood and the circumstances we were putting in. And I would also say that all of this drill stuff, trap rap, it was a trap. Like literally, there was bait sent out there, and they went and they were taking bites of that whatever, that cheese or whatever, and they thought it was all good. Nobody could see all of these indictments 10 years ago. Nobody could see all these indictments 20 years ago. This stuff just started happening. Like they just started putting a clamp down on the trap that they set for all of these young dudes, and they all are falling into it. So again, man, this stuff ain't just entertainment. These people are actually out here living it, and these young guys here are a reflection of all of that stuff that people used to call entertainment when Lil Durk was just a kid. And now he lived it, and now he's getting life in prison or possibly the death penalty because of that trap. So I'm not just blowing smoke out here whenever I say that this stuff ain't entertainment, it's conditioning. I think Lil Durk situation would be one of my exhibits that I would display and say, hey, well, what about the Durk situation? Because this young man had it all going for him, and he threw it all away because of the mentality that he was conditioned in as a young person. So yeah, man, everybody, y'all just watch out there. Any young up and coming people, this ain't the right way to go. And I'm with you with that whole free Durk thing. I'm already seeing it out there. But honestly, I just look on the other side of those avatars, and I really think that they're middle school kids, 21-year-olds and stuff like that. But I know there's some grown people out there with the rigmarole too.
They say that's the future. That's the
Yeah.
future. So you talk about trauma and social conditioning with Dirk being a young person growing up in that trap, and now he lived it. These are kids growing up in a similar trap, and they're going to, mature into adulthood, and they'll be kicking the same stuff.
Yep.
So, whether they're kids or not, to me is not relevant. The fact that
Yeah.
they're even saying it, given what we know thus far, is a problem.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. We'll see how it plays out, man, but it ain't looking good thus far. It ain't looking good. Shouts out to shouts out to Terrence McClennan on the chat. He said he saw this coming, that's why he gave life to God. Maybe, who knows? Crazy.